that have been organised around the country on the future of tertiary education funding. In particular, last night down at SIT, looking at the future of Polytechs and Polytechnic funding. It's a big issue around the country. Polytechs lost $32 million worth of funding between 2010 and 2011 in the regions. So that's places like Invercargill and Nelson, Whanganui, Palmerston North. Those sorts of places saw, in the case of SIT, 14% of its funding was lost between 2010 and 2011. From a Labour point of view, we think that's the wrong approach. We think that it's actually more important than ever to be investing in training and skill needs in the regions, and we'd actually like to see polytechnics be further developed into particular centres of excellence around the country. The job of a polytech is to provide for the labour market needs in its area and region, but also to develop particular skills, be it in journalism or visual arts or midwifery or whatever it is. We want to see particular polytechs pick up areas where they're going to be centres of excellence. But unfortunately, the current government's going in the other direction. It's taking the view that it can cut the funding to these polytechs. And from Labour's point of view, this is part of a wider campaign that we began this week, which is to move into the regional areas of New Zealand and essentially highlight that we believe the government has let down provincial New Zealand. Traditionally, people would think that a National Party government would be looking after the provinces and looking after rural New Zealand, but actually the evidence of the last 4 years is quite the opposite. Major job losses in regional areas, particularly public service agencies leaving regional areas, centralising these services to Wellington. We've seen a reduction in roading funding in the regions, with money finding its way more to the city areas. And as I say, reductions in funding for polytechs as well. So we're out there highlighting the fact that we think this is the wrong way to go. Auckland's definitely our largest city and it's an important part of our economy, but we can't neglect the regional parts of New Zealand, which are the engine room of a number of aspects of the economy. So we've been out there highlighting that this week, and we'll be carrying that on over the next few weeks. So that's basically why I'm down here at the moment. Overall, Phil and I were just saying before we were talking, someone said to me last week, well, the government about halfway through its term. Actually, it's not. It's less than a third of the way through its term. It's just that an awful lot's happened this year. And I think we find ourselves at the moment is that the government, after nearly 4 years of being in office, is still without a proper plan to grow the economy. It's had a few different ideas. We had the cycleway. We had a jobs summit at the start where there were more people at the summit than jobs created by it. Then they thought they might mine national parks. Then they backed off that idea. Now they're back to talking about mining. And really the only substantive idea they've had for the economy is asset sales, which we think is a deeply flawed economic theory. You don't sell off your house to pay the mortgage. You shouldn't sell off assets that are revenue generating for New Zealand in the future to meet your perceived debt problems that you have. So we don't believe the government has an economic plan. It's also been in a chaotic shambles this last 6 or 7 months, with scandals in ACC and problems with the Pokie Machine Convention Centre deal for Sky City in Auckland. John Banks. It's John Banks, actually. No, don't need to explain that, do you? So we believe they've had a pretty shambolic year. They've taken their eye off the ball economically, and that's a major problem for New Zealand. From a Labour point of view, we believe that actually the government's ignoring some major structural issues with the economy. We have a problem with where money is invested in our economy, and we need to actually improve how much New Zealanders save. We need to get our tax system right. We need to look at this affordability of superannuation into the future as our population ages, and we need to get a fairer tax system. So we're going to be talking a lot more about those kind of major structural economic issues, because we think what the government's doing at the moment is tinkering poorly and in the wrong places. That'll probably do for my way of introduction. Questions? Could you tell me your name too?
Pauline. Hi, Mr. Robertson. Does Labour plan to send a representative to the funeral of the 2 soldiers?
Three actually. Labour leader David Shearer is there, and our defence spokesperson Ian Leith Galloway, and our foreign affairs spokesperson.
So he doesn't have a Facebook account together?
No.
Joe, with the redistribution of the Polytech funds, I'm right to say that they're being redistributed from Polytechs and pushed into universities more so?
In some cases, yeah. In the last, there's actually been an overall reduction in tertiary education funding. In the 4 years, around about $500 million has disappeared out of what is a very large budget. But in general, yes, the answer is the money's in fact gone from regional polytechnics to either metro city polytechs or universities.
So where would Labour like to see the balance? Would it go back to where it was, or do you want the push further towards polytechnics?
I think actually as a country, we've got to value trade and technical skills more. I think it's one of the great weaknesses we have in New Zealand. I don't know about you guys, but when I was at school, people were being pushed towards university who actually wouldn't necessarily benefit from it as much as they would from going into other areas. There are very lucrative and important careers to be found in core trades and other types of technical skills that are taught in a polytechnic environment. I think we do need to rebalance that. Of course we need lots of people going to university, and if someone's capable of going there, I'd really encourage them, but I don't think we do enough in New Zealand. So we would do that. One of the things we did when we were last in office, which the government has changed, is that we put in a weighting for funding for regional polytechs. Let's take an example that's not in the Cargill so we don't make it awkward for everyone, but if we take the west coast of New Zealand, we want the Labour Party wants there to be a post-secondary school training facility on the west coast. The truth of the matter is it will never pay its own way because there just aren't enough people there, but we still want the training available there. Well, you just have to put the extra funding in, and that's what we did. The government's now removed the weighting that we put in for regional polytechs. We think we should go back to it. Down with that.
What do you think of